Let me tell you something about a man, because a lot of women think when they leave, he just shrugs and moves on. No, ma'am, that's not how it works. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the reaction is not loud at first. It's quiet, too quiet. He doesn't cry the day you walk out. He doesn't fall apart immediately. In fact, he might look relieved. He might look free. And that's the part that hurts you the most. But see, what you don't understand is men process loss backward. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the first thing you have to understand is this: he does not feel it right away. And that confuses a lot of women. You walk away expecting him to chase, to panic, to beg, and when he doesn't, it feels like proof that you never mattered. But men don't experience loss the way women do. Women feel it instantly. Men delay it, and that delay is dangerous because while you're healing, he's pretending nothing changed. At first, he feels light. The pressure is gone. No one questioning him, no one holding him accountable, no one expecting him to show up emotionally. He tells himself this is freedom. He tells his friends he's good. He convinces himself that losing you wasn't a loss at all. And because men are wired to suppress emotion, he leans into distractions, work, friends, noise, other women, anything that keeps him from sitting still long enough to feel the truth. But life doesn't stay loud forever. Eventually the noise dies down, and that's when the silence gets heavy. That's when it starts creeping in. He reaches for his phone out of habit, and there's no message from you. He has a win, a bad day, a moment that matters, and there's no one who genuinely celebrates him or checks on his soul. That's when the realization begins, slowly and painfully. Something important is missing. What hits him hardest is not the big moments, it's the ordinary ones, the routines, the consistency, the way you were there without being asked, the way you loved him when he was tired, broke, uncertain, and unsure of himself. He starts remembering how you showed up even when he didn't deserve it. And that's when regret starts forming, because now he sees the value of what he had, but it's no longer within reach. A man doesn't grieve immediately because he thinks love is optional until it's gone. He doesn't understand the weight of emotional safety until he no longer has it. And once he realizes that you were not just a woman in his life, but the woman holding pieces of his life together, it hits him all at once. Late nights, quiet mornings, empty spaces where your presence used to be. That's when the pain becomes unavoidable. He starts replaying moments differently. Conversations he dismissed, warnings he ignored, chances you gave that he took lightly. And here's the truth most men won't say out loud. Losing a woman who truly loved him forces him to confront himself, not you. Himself, his immaturity, his complacency, his fear of commitment. And that reflection is uncomfortable because it exposes how much of the loss was preventable. By the time he finally feels it, you are already gone emotionally. You've cried, you've processed, you've rebuilt. And that delayed reaction becomes his punishment. Because now he understands what he lost, but understanding came too late. And that's the cruelest part of love, for a man realizing the value of something only after it's no longer his to keep. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the second reaction is not about missing her body or her presence. It's about missing how she made his life feel. At first, he doesn't even recognize what's happening to him. He just knows something is off. The excitement he used to feel feels dull. The confidence he carried feels shaky. And he can't quite explain why. That's because a woman who loves a man deeply doesn't just love him emotionally, she stabilizes him. And when that stability disappears, his whole world starts feeling unbalanced. He begins to notice the absence in places he never paid attention to before. Decisions feel heavier. Problems feel bigger. When he was with her, he didn't feel alone in the weight of life, even if she wasn't physically present. Her belief in him gave him fuel. Her encouragement gave him courage. And now, without that silent support, everything requires more effort. He has to motivate himself. He has to calm himself. And that's when he realizes how much emotional labor she was carrying without ever asking for credit. This is also when comparison starts creeping in. He meets other women, talks to other women, even dates other women, but something is missing. Conversations don't flow the same. Support feels conditional. Interest feels shallow. He starts noticing that most people love him for what he can provide, not for who he is. And that's when it hits him that her love was rare. She loved him when he was strong, but she also loved him when he was uncertain. That kind of love doesn't show up often, and once it's gone, it leaves a permanent mark. His pride becomes his biggest enemy during this phase. He wants to reach out, but he's afraid of rejection. He wants to apologize, but he's afraid of admitting he was wrong. So instead of acting, he overthinks. He replays memories late at night, imagining different endings, different choices, different versions of himself that would have kept her. And that mental loop slowly turns into regret, because now he understands that love like hers required protection, not neglect. What hurts him most is realizing that she didn't leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she loved herself enough to stop settling. And that truth stings because it means the loss wasn't inevitable. It was earned. He had chances. He had warnings. He had time. And he wasted it. A man can live with rejection, but it's much harder to live with the knowledge that he caused his own heartbreak. As time passes, her absence becomes a mirror. Every failure reminds him of the encouragement she would have given. Every success reminds him of the celebration she would have shared. And slowly he understands that losing her didn't just cost him a relationship, it cost him a version of himself that felt more grounded, more supported, and more whole. That realization doesn't fade. It settles in, and it stays with him. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the third reaction shows up in his pride, and this is where the struggle becomes internal. On the outside, he may look fine. He may even look confident. But inside, something is constantly pulling at him because now he has to sit with the reality of what he lost and the role he played in losing it. This is the stage where his ego and his heart are in direct conflict. A man's pride tells him to stay silent. It tells him not to chase, not to admit mistakes, not to look weak. Society teaches men that strength means control and emotional distance. So even when he knows he messed up, he convinces himself that reaching out would lower his value. He waits, hoping time will fix what effort should have handled. But time doesn't heal neglect, it only creates distance. While he stays quiet, his emotions get louder. He starts missing her at the worst moments, late at night, early in the morning. During small victories and a clean, polished version at you 580 words, no subheadings, no conclusion. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the third reaction shows up in his pride, and this is where the real battle begins. On the outside, he may look fine, even confident. He might still laugh, still go out, still act unbothered. But inside, there is a quiet conflict he can't escape because now he has to sit with the reality of what he lost and the role he played in losing it. This is the stage where his ego and his heart stop agreeing. A man's pride tells him to stay silent. It tells him not to reach out, not to admit fault, not to expose vulnerability. He has been taught that strength means control and emotional restraint. So even when he knows he made mistakes, he convinces himself that apologizing would make him look weak. He tells himself that if she really mattered, she would come back on her own. And in that thinking, pride becomes a shield that protects his image but damages his future. While he stays quiet, his emotions grow louder. He starts missing her at inconvenient times, moments when there is no distraction to hide behind. Late at night when the world slows down. Early in the morning when the bed feels empty. During small victories when there is no one to share the excitement with. That's when her absence becomes impossible to ignore. He doesn't just miss her presence, he misses the version of himself he was when she believed in him. Regret begins to form in layers. He replays conversations in his head, realizing she wasn't asking for too much, she was asking for effort. He remembers the time she tried to communicate, and he dismissed it as nagging. The moment she needed reassurance, and he offered silence instead. What once felt like pressure now feels like care he failed to protect. And that realization hurts because it shows him that love was present, but he wasn't. This is also when he realizes that her leaving wasn't sudden. It was gradual. She didn't walk away the first time he disappointed her. She stayed. She tried. She adjusted. And only when she felt emotionally exhausted did she choose herself, understanding that she left with a heavy heart, not a cold one, adds weight to his regret, because it means her absence is the result of repeated neglect, not a single mistake. A man can handle rejection, but what breaks him is knowing he was trusted and still failed. He was given loyalty and responded with complacency. And now, every time he thinks about reaching out, fear stops him. Fear that she has healed. Fear that she no longer wants him. Fear that his silence has already said too much. So he stays stuck between wanting to fix it and being too proud to try. By the time pride loosens its grip, the damage is often done. The woman who once waited is no longer waiting. She has learned how to live without him, and that realization humbles him in a way nothing else can, because losing a woman who truly loved him doesn't just hurt his heart, it forces him to confront the cost of choosing ego over effort. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the fourth reaction reveals itself through comparison, and this is where reality becomes unavoidable. At this point, he has tried distraction, silence, and pride, but none of it has filled the space she left behind. So he begins looking outward, believing that someone new might ease the discomfort. He tells himself that moving on will help him forget. That replacement will heal the loss. But what he doesn't realize is that comparison is not relief, it is punishment. He meets new women, talks to them, even enjoys the attention for a while. On the surface, everything seems fine. But slowly, he starts noticing differences. Conversations don't go as deep. Support feels conditional. Affection feels temporary. He realizes that most people are interested in what he can offer, not in understanding who he is when no one is watching. And that's when her memory starts showing up in the smallest ways. He remembers how she listened without rushing him, how she stood by him when he had nothing figured out, how she believed in his potential before it ever showed results. With her, he didn't have to perform, he didn't have to impress. He could be unfinished and still be loved, and that kind of love doesn't appear often. So when he encounters surface-level connections, the contrast becomes painfully clear. This is where regret deepens, because now he understands that what he lost wasn't just a relationship, it was emotional safety. She created a space where he could fail, grow, and restart without judgment. And now, without that space, everything feels transactional. He gives effort expecting something in return instead of being loved freely. That shift changes how he sees connection altogether. He also begins to notice how rare her patience was. Other women don't wait the way she did. They don't explain themselves repeatedly. They don't tolerate emotional distance without walking away. And that's when he realizes she wasn't weak for staying as long as she did. She was strong. Strong enough to hope, strong enough to try, and eventually strong enough to leave. At this stage, the idea of reaching out becomes more intense, but also more complicated. Because now he isn't just afraid of rejection, he's afraid of comparison from her side. Afraid that she has found someone who treats her better, someone who listens, someone who values her. And that fear humbles him because it forces him to imagine her happiness without him. Every new interaction becomes a reminder of what he failed to protect. He stops looking for connection and starts looking for familiarity, but nothing feels the same. That's when it finally clicks. People are not replaceable. A woman who truly loved him was not interchangeable. She was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and he treated her like an option. And the hardest truth settles in quietly. The women he meets now are not disappointing. They are simply not her. And that realization follows him everywhere, reminding him that some losses don't come with second chances, only lessons that last forever. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the fifth reaction shows up as deep regret, and this is where the loss becomes permanent in his mind. This is no longer about missing her presence or comparing her to others. This is about realizing that the love she gave him was unconditional, and he didn't recognize its value while he had it. That realization doesn't come gently. It comes with weight. He starts understanding that her love wasn't based on convenience. She didn't love him only when he was confident, successful, or strong. She loved him when he was unsure, when he was frustrated, when he didn't have answers. She saw potential instead of perfection. And that kind of love is rare because most people love you for what you bring to the table, not for who you are while you're still building it. This is when guilt starts creeping in. He realizes how patient she was, how many times she explained herself calmly, how often she tried to communicate instead of walking away. He remembers the nights she stayed quiet just to keep the peace, the moments she swallowed her hurt just to avoid conflict. At the time, he mistook her endurance for weakness. Now he understands it was strength. He also begins to see how she compromised without losing herself, until losing herself became the reason she had to leave. And that realization hits hard because it tells him she didn't leave impulsively. She left after trying everything. She left after giving more chances than he deserved. And once a woman leaves after loving that deeply, she doesn't come back the same. If she comes back at all, this is where regret turns inward. He stops blaming circumstances. He stops blaming timing. He stops blaming her expectations. And he finally looks at himself. He sees where he was emotionally unavailable, where he chose comfort over effort, where he assumed her love would always be there, no matter how little he invested. That self-awareness doesn't feel empowering. It feels heavy because it comes too late. A man can replace attention, affection, even companionship, but he cannot replace loyalty that stood firm when nothing else was stable. He cannot replace a woman who believed in him before results showed up. And once he understands that, every memory becomes sharper, not nostalgic, but instructional. Every moment he dismissed becomes a lesson he wishes he had learned earlier. He starts realizing that her love was safe. And safe love is something many men don't recognize until it's gone. It didn't come with chaos. It didn't come with games. It didn't come with uncertainty. And because it felt steady, he underestimated it. He didn't know that peace can be mistaken for boredom when you don't understand its value. Now, he notices how different things feel without that safety. He questions himself more. Doubts linger longer. Stress feels heavier. And he understands that she wasn't just loving him emotionally, she was grounding him. Losing her didn't just cost him a partner, it cost him emotional balance. This is also when fear shows up. Fear that he will never experience that kind of love again. Fear that he will always compare future relationships to the one he ruined. Fear that the woman who truly loved him became the lesson that shaped him for someone else. And that fear stays with him because deep down he knows unconditional love is not guaranteed twice. The regret doesn't scream. It sits quietly. It shows up in moments of reflection, in late night thoughts, in passing memories that suddenly feel heavy. And the hardest part for him to accept is this: she didn't leave to hurt him. She left to save herself. And understanding that truth changes how he sees love forever. When a man loses a woman who truly loved him, the sixth reaction is transformation, and it is the most painful one because it forces him to change or live with the consequences forever. By this stage, denial is gone, distraction no longer works, comparison has failed, regret has settled in. What remains is a clear understanding that the loss altered him in a permanent way, whether he likes it or not. He begins to realize that losing her was not just about losing love, it was about losing growth. She challenged him in ways he avoided. She expected more from him, not because she was demanding, but because she saw what he was capable of becoming. While she was there, he resisted that pressure. Now, without her, he understands that the pressure was actually guidance. And without it, he feels directionless. This is when accountability becomes unavoidable. He can no longer blame timing, stress, or circumstances. He sees clearly where he chose comfort over commitment, where he avoided hard conversations, where he delayed responsibility, assuming love would wait. And that realization forces a question he can't escape. Will he become better because of this loss, or will he repeat the same patterns with someone new? Some men choose growth. They sit with the pain instead of running from it. They learn how to communicate. They learn how to be present. They understand that love requires maintenance, not just attraction. They become emotionally available not because it's easy, but because they finally understand the cost of being unavailable. Losing a woman who truly loved him becomes the moment that shapes him into a better man. But for other men, the loss becomes a scar they never heal. They harden, they close off emotionally. They convince themselves that love is risky and vulnerability is dangerous. Instead of learning, they retreat. And that choice follows them into every future relationship because unhealed pain always repeats itself. What's powerful about this stage is that he finally sees her impact clearly. He understands that she wasn't holding him back, she was building him up. She wasn't asking for too much, she was asking for partnership. And that clarity changes how he views women, love, and himself. Even if he never gets another chance with her, her influence stays with him. He also realizes something uncomfortable: she may be thriving without him. The woman who once poured into him has now redirected that energy into herself. She has grown stronger, more confident, more selective. And knowing that she didn't lose herself when she lost him humbles him deeply, because it proves that her love was genuine, but her worth was never dependent on him. This stage forces maturity. He becomes more intentional with his